while ago, I made the easiest game, but what happens if I transform this game into the hardest game?
I am over these shenanigans. You truly are a worthless human being. What? No!
Hey, what's up guys, it's BenBonk, and recently I wanted to give myself a little challenge. A while back, I created the game A Simple Survey. If you don't know, it's a simple and very easy game about answering questions given by a narrator, which is made in this video. The game kind of blew up and is by far my most popular game yet. So today, I thought it'd be really cool to transform this easy game into an extremely difficult one. Now, how can I make this game hard? There are many ways to add difficulty to a game, but many of those ways can be annoying and not fun. So I need to find a way to make a really hard game while also having some interesting gameplay so people wouldn't just get instantly bored. With that said, the first thing I worked on is drafting out ideas for a new gameplay system for this game. A Simple Survey was heavily question based, and while that's cool, I thought it'd be even more cool to add in not only questions, but also trials or mini challenges to the game. As for difficulty, to make the game hard, I thought it'd be neat to have multiple different endings, but have one true ending that would be extremely difficult to obtain. This way, I can make the game technically hard, but also hopefully somewhat fun, and still have it be enjoyed by different types of players. So I got to work. I first just created a Google Doc to draft out some of the basic details for this game. I also spent some time drafting ideas for trials. I wanted these trials to be testing basic human abilities such as memory, reaction time, math, morals, and so on. I then hopped into Unity, cloned the Simple Survey project, and just proceeded to spend some time cleaning up the project and getting it ready. Once that was all done, I just got straight into creating trials. The first trial I worked on was a sort of speed maze challenge. For this trial, the player would have to navigate through a maze, if you'd even call it that, within a limited number of seconds. So I created this basic maze and imported and set up everything in Unity. I also started to create a basic 2D movement script for the player and functionality for the timer. And shortly after, the trial was pretty much done. Once the narrator finishes his narration, which wasn't really set up yet, the player would be able to move and the timer will tick down. If the player reaches the start before the timer is 0, they pass, and if not, they fail. Moving on to the next trial, I wanted to make a game where the player must follow a ball placed under a panel, kinda like the Red Cup ball game. But the difference is, this trial definitely isn't flawed, as each panel is a different color. But anyways, I worked on animations and logic for this trial, and eventually it was pretty much done. The narrator placed this ball under a panel, shuffled those panels, and asked the player to select which panel the ball is under. I then wanted to work on a follow-up question to this trial to test the player's honesty. This required me to completely rework the question manager from A Simple Survey, but at the end of the day, I got it done. I then wanted to make a math problem for the player. I was originally going to create a Sudoku board, but I figured that would be a little bit of a pain, so I switched it to a sort of logic puzzle instead. I made this board and quickly realized that I needed a way for the player to input their answer. And speaking of input, I'm going to input this Core sponsorship into the video right now. Core is a new, free game creation platform that allows you to build, publish, and play games. If you're just starting out with game development, Core is a great choice and allows you to quickly create your own games, and is especially useful if you want to set up a 3D multiplayer game. And the best part is, you don't even need to know how to code, so you can get started making games instantly with their thousands of free, high-quality music, sound, and art assets, drag-and-drop game mechanics, and built-in 3D modeling with no coding required. But if you'd like to go deeper, feel free to create your own game logic in Lua, and when you're ready to publish, your game will go live on the Core platform, all with the click of a button. Core also handles all the hassle involved with multiplayer networking for you, and I love how it can allow for creators to create their dream games without needing an extensive programming background. Finally, Core has a fantastic revenue share plan, giving creators 50% of their earnings through the Perks program, while also doing so much for creators. Some Core creators have even been able to find great financial success with the help of the Perks program. And with that said, thanks to Core for sponsoring this video. So I took this opportunity to work on some smaller circle buttons in addition to the normal rectangle buttons. After creating all these buttons and animations, I got them functioning in the scene, which was pretty neat. I then added numbers to these buttons, which would allow the player to select their answer for what number was missing in the empty box. And that was pretty much that. I then made this trial where you have to subscribe to the BenBonk YouTube channel. Just kidding, but please consider doing that if you like these kinds of videos. For the next trial, I made a reaction speed test, where the narrator would quickly flash a light, and the player would have to react to that flashing light as quickly as possible. The narrator would be happier the faster you clicked, and vice versa. Moving on, I worked on a memory buttons game, where the narrator would play a sequence of button presses, and the player would have to repeat those button presses back, getting harder each time. So I got to work on this, and I ended up creating a somewhat elaborate system. At the start of the trial, I randomized the set order of narrator button presses. I then play a variable number of button presses back to the player, increasing 1 each time. And finally, I check for the player's input to see if it matches the order, and rinse and repeat. Here's what this looked like in action. The narrator would press a button, the player would repeat that sequence, and the process would repeat, getting more difficult each time for a total of 7 button presses. Moving on, I made another sort of speed reaction test, where the player must stop this timer when there's a 3 and a 5 on it, kinda taking inspiration from Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. But regardless, this trial would also adapt to the player's time depending if they got a 3 and a 5, one or the other, or none at all. Now, let's just rapid fire a few trials. In this trial, all you have to do is click what's wrong with the sequence of images. Shouldn't be too difficult, right? In this trial, all you have to do is watch some balls fly across the screen, and Twitter seems to think this math problem is a piece of cake. But with all that said, I was pretty much at the point where I had a good deal of trials finished, and I thought it would make sense to attempt to draft out a flowchart for the game and just get a rough outline of how it would end up functioning in the end. So I hopped into Miro and started drafting out this flowchart. This is a process that took quite a few days to complete, as I was basically structuring and laying out the foundation for how the entire game would run. I'd love to show you more of this process and what the flowchart ended up looking like, but I also don't want to spoil much of the game, as a lot of the fun comes with exploration and a sense of mystery in my opinion, so you'll just have to play the game to find out. But I will tell you that holy cow, this flowchart ended up being pretty massive, and in that moment I realized I might have overscoped a little. However, with all that done, I figured it would make sense just to move on to writing the script for the narrator. So I did just that and proceeded to spend way too much time creating over 3,500 words or 11 pages of narration for the narrator. With the script now done, instead of instantly getting into recording the narration, I sporadically instead decided to work on the narration system inside of Unity. I wanted this system to be dynamic, allowing for the narrator to have many different states and work across a wide variety of trials. I also wanted to make sure that the player could skip narration, as that was a major complaint in a simple survey, so I spent a while creating an outline of this system. At its core, I created a class that trial classes could inherit, which makes them implement an intro audio clip as well as a start function. Then, when a new trial is loaded, I can play the trial's intro audio with the persistent game manager object, and when that audio is done playing, the trial's start game function will be called. But here's what this looked like in action. A trial is loaded, the intro audio is played, and then the start game function is called. Alternatively, the player can press space to skip the audio and automatically call the start game function for that trial. And when a trial is finished, I can call this function on the game manager, which takes in an audio clip and a scene to load. This audio can also be skipped. This might not have been the most clean system, but you're free to roast my prepubescent programmer brain in the comments if you'd like. Anyways, with the narration system basically done, I decided to work on creating some more trials for the game. I drafted out a few ideas while creating the flowchart for this game, so I needed to get a start, especially on trials that were part of a unique path. For example, take this trial. You need to press this blue button if you want to piss off the narrator. However, it is impossible to do so. So what happens if you knock off these screws, grab this convenient cheese, and place it on the button? Oh boy, this game is goofy. But after finishing up a few more additional trials, as well as the narrator script, which just needed some final touch-ups and additions, it was time to record the narration. In a simple survey, my game jam partner, Dynam, took on this responsibility. I think he's a fantastic narrator, but unfortunately he was too busy with personal things this time around to help narrate. So after a lot of contemplation, I just decided to try to do the narration myself. I spent a while grinding through the narration and recording all 11 pages in Audacity. I also spent some time adding a kind of robotic voice effect with the help of Dynam, and by the end, I had all this. I think the narration is far from perfect, and it could be much better as I'm no voice actor, but whatever, I think it got the job done. I then exported each individual narration clip, which was probably the worst thing I've ever gone through in my life. I then just had to set up all these clips in Unity, making trials transition correctly, and a bunch of other stuff. I must admit, the last week or so of development was frankly extremely grueling and unfun, as I just had to put all the moving pieces together. I also got stuck on a vast number of bugs with the narration system, some taking literal days to fix. Like the time I put this trial loading function in the for loop, which caused a messy chain reaction, but we don't talk about that. And with the game almost done, I got a group of people together to help me playtest and find even more bugs. Shout out to these guys. Finally, I put the game on itch.io, so please feel free to check it out. I'm extremely proud of it, though you might have a bit of trouble actually beating it. First link in the description. Before you go, I know Sam Hogan claims to have made the hardest game ever, but I believe this game is a little more difficult. At least, I think so. So let me know if you try the game out and end up getting the true ending. And you'll know which ending that is. Also, make sure to check out Core, link in the description. Anyways, if you liked the video, please consider liking or subscribing. Well, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.